We're starting on page 6-32. Okay. So you want to be on page 6-32. This is a very complicated part because it's basically acting as a review where you're going to be doing basically all the features that we've been doing since the beginning. So we're going to do an extrude. We're going to do a sweep. We're going to do a revolve. We're going to do a loft. So this part is basically a Frankenstein monster of features to help you kind of review all the different ways you can create shapes inside of SolidWorks. All right, so we're going to start. We're going to go a new inch part. We're going to say okay. I'm going to save. And I'm going to save to my SolidWorks. (2020) spring homework. And I'm going to call it housing and save it. And I'm going to file properties. And in description, I'm going to call it housing flashlight. And I'm going to say okay. And I'm going to save. Anybody lost? Anybody needing help? Okay, our first sketch is going to be on the front plane. So I'm going to select the front plane, new sketch. I'm going to select circle. Circle is going to be coincident to the origin. And it's going to be 4.375. Okay. So everybody should have a circle. It should have a diameter of 4.375. It should be coincident with the origin. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, it should say fully defined. Anybody needing help? Anybody lost?
Mine says underdefined.
Okay, so there are two things that it could be missing. One would be the coincident relationship with the origin, and the other one would be the diameter.
If you click the display delete relations button, it shows you all the relations in your sketch.
That is true. And notice I've got a coincident, and notice if I highlight it in that list, it'll highlight it in the view. If I highlight it in the list, it should highlight it in the view. See that? So you can actually see what each relationship is.
Yeah, I was using on the bottom left end of the parameters. I was using that as the smart dimension.
It's not a good idea to use the properties to try and add dimensions. That's something a lot of new users tend to do. And whatever you enter into the properties dialog doesn't stick. So you need to use the dimension and you need to use the define relations, like I've showed you. Otherwise, you're basically wasting your time and chasing your tail.
So I put in 4.375, but it says 4.38. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. What it is if you come over here and you look at your edit document units, I've got mine set to 3 decimal places, but if you have yours set to 2, it rounds up. Okay. I set mine to 3 in my sketch, and I have it set at 2 in my drawings. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. I'm going to do a boss extrude. And I'm going to extrude it 1.3 inches. Okay. And I'm just extruding it out. So notice the arrow is coming toward me. It's going in the positive Z direction. And you can see the Cartesian coordinate system in the lower left corner of your screen. And you can see the Z is going out towards you and the screen in the positive Z direction. And this arrow is also going in the positive Z direction. And I'm going to green check. And then I'm going to save. Okay, so now we're going to do a loft. And the loft is going to be
So sorry to interrupt. What was the value of the extrude?
1.3.
1.3, thank you.
Yeah, and no draft. And I'm now on page 6-33. Okay, so I want to do a loft, and remember the rules for a loft is more than one sketch on more than one plane. Okay, so I want to create a plane that's offset from this back face. So I want to select the back face of the base extrude. And notice my front plane is right here. Okay. So I'm going to select this front plane and I'm going to come up to the reference plane. I'm going to do an offset plane and I want to offset it 1.3, but I want to offset the direction away from the extrude. So like here. Everybody see it? So I selected my front plane and I did an offset plane 1.3 inches from that face or from the front plane. And then I'm going to green check and I'm going to rename that plane battery loft plane. And I'm going to save. So I'm going to create a sketch here, and then I'm going to create a sketch on the battery loft plane. For my sketch here, all I want to do, whoops, sorry. All I want to do is select this face for my sketch, and I'm going to copy this edge, this outside circle, into the sketch. Okay. So, clear all drawings. Okay. That's what I'm doing. I'm gonna go back to my mouse. I'm selecting this face right here and I'm going new sketch. Now, what tool should I use to copy the edge, outside edge of that circular? How do I copy that outside circular edge into my sketch? What should I do?
Convert entities.
Convert entities. Thank you, Jim. Okay, so I'm going to select this edge. See how it highlights in blue? And then I'm going to select convert entities. And then I'm going to exit the sketch. So there's my first sketch. And notice if I highlight it, it's just that circle. And I'm going to call that profile 1. Just so I can keep track of it. This is my first profile that I'm going to use for my loft. Okay. Okay, so now I want to create a sketch on my battery plane. Okay, so I'm going to select the battery plane. I want to do new sketch. Now I want to copy this edge onto the battery plane. So what should I use?
Convert entities.
Yep. Okay. So now I have that circle on there. I'm going to go normal too. And I'm going to switch to a wireframe view just to make it easier for you to see what's going on. All right. And I'm going to turn off visibility of that battery plane. Okay. So basically, I just have this circle. All right. Now I'm going to take the center line. I'm going to draw a center line from the origin. Whoops.
So Elisa, I have a question. So were you in the battery loft plane when you converted the circle on? Because I guess I feel like I don't understand the missing step. So do you have? So you're in the loft plane.
Right. I created. I created one sketch on the back of the extrude, and now I'm on the second sketch that I need for the loft. And the second sketch is on the battery loft plane.
Okay, got it.
Okay. And the second sketch, and it is confusing because I converted the same edge twice. The first time was on the first sketch and the second time was on the second sketch. Make sense?
So you converted the circle to the plane one, to the plane that's in front of the.
I have the circle on this battery loft plane. See it?
Yeah, you converted the entity to that new plane.
Right. But then I also have this sketch where I converted it on the back edge. So I have two sketches. I have profile one, which is on the back edge. I'm going to shade it so you can see it. So right here, there's a sketch here. So it's called profile one. If I click on edit sketch, I've got this, just this edge, and that's all that is on that sketch. And this is really important because a lot of people, and Elsa will agree with me on this, a lot of people miss this part where you're supposed to create a sketch on the back face of this extrude. And then when they create their loft, they just select the back face instead of selecting the sketch because they forgot to create the sketch or they missed that part. And then they'll get an error later on when we try to create a shell. Remember that, Elsa? Oh, yeah. So it's really, really important that you don't skip this step, that you copy this edge onto a sketch and then exit the sketch. And remember, with a loft, you have to have two sketches, at least two, minimum of two. You can have more than two, but you have to have at least two sketches for the loft to be correct. So I've created sketch one, which all it is the circle. That's the edge that got copied. Okay. And now I've got sketch two. That's going to be profile two. I'll rename it. Okay. And so far, all I've got in that sketch is a circle and a vertical center line. But I'm going to do some more stuff. I'm going to edit that sketch down. Okay. I'm going to go back to wireframe. Okay. Any questions about what I've said so far? Everybody good? Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to select the line tool and I'm going to draw I'm going to draw a horizontal line. And then I'm going to draw a vertical line all the way to the bottom here. And I want it to be a vertical line. Okay. So far in this sketch, what I have got this circular edge. I've got a center line. I've got a horizontal line, and I've got a vertical line. That's what I've got on this sketch. Okay. Everybody should have the same thing. Okay. Now I'm going to select the Filat tool. The Filat tool is located right here. Okay. On your sketch tab. Okay. So locate that Filat tool right here. And we want to give it a radius of 0.5 from here to here. Okay. Just for now. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to mirror this line, this arc, and this line over to the other side. I have a mirror entities tool right here. Everybody see the mirror entities on the ribbon? Okay. Now to mirror the entities, I can do it a couple different ways. I can hold down my control key and I can select all the entities I want to mirror. So see, I've got the arc and 2 lines listed over here in selected entities. And then I can click mirror entities. And then everything I've got pre-selected is over in that box. And then I click mirror about. And then I select the center line and it mirrors over. So that's one way to do the mirror tool. Another way to do the mirror tool is I can select mirror entities and then I can window around the line, the 2 lines in the arc, and then I can click on mirror about and then select the center line and then green check. Either way works, okay? So now I'm gonna add a dimension. I'm gonna say this dimension is 3.1. Okay. And then I want a dimension from the horizontal line to the origin, and that's going to be 1.6. Okay. And now I'm on page 6-36. Okay. So at this point, what have I got? I've got 2 dimensions, the 3.1 and the 1.6 and the 0.5 for the fillet. I've got a horizontal line. I've got 2 lines here. I've got the 2 arcs here, and I have a center line. And you'll notice down below it says fully defined. Okay. But what I next want to do is I want to trim out this section of the arc and this section of the arc. And what I want is I want to create something that's kind of like home plate. So I've got the arc at the bottom, just like that. Like this. So this is what I want my sketch to be. Okay. So anything outside kind of looks like a piece of toast. Anything outside of that, I want trimmed away. Okay. So to trim that away, I'm going to select the Trim Entities tool. And I'm going to use Power Trim. And I'm just going to click on that side and click on this side. And I'm going to green check. So if you look at it, it looks like this. I'm kind of orienting it around so you can kind of see what it looks like. And then I want to add my fillets, my 0.5 fillets on the bottom. And round it out. So this is what it looks like. Okay. Then I'm going to exit. And I've got 2 sketches. I'm going to save it. I've got profile 1, which is that circle. And I've got profile 2, which is my home plate or my piece of toast. Okay. And I want to create a loft between profile 1 and profile 2. Okay. Any questions about what I just did? Okay, so I'm back. Everybody should have 2 sketches, profile 1 and profile 2. And ready to do a lofted boss space. And locate that lofted boss space on the ribbon. Okay. So I'm going to select lofted boss space, and then it asks me for my profiles. So I'm going to expand right here. So I'm going to click on this little arrow, and I'm going to select profile 1 and then profile 2. And you see a little preview. And I'm going to green check. And I'm going to shade it up. And now you can see the basic shape. And I'm going to save.
Okay. Elise,
Yeah.
I've got a weird shape to my profile. How should the guide curve be positioned?
There's no guide curve.
It's showing me one.
You should not have a guide curve.
Those are the
I got you.
connectors.
Might be a connector.
Okay, well, it's
So I have no, oh, I have one
green.
connector down here.
Huh?
I have one little connector.
Yeah, and that's making the shape kind of lopsided on one side.
Okay, well, remember you can right click and say show all connectors, and then right click again and say reset connectors.
I just did that and it was amazing.
Oh, so
That works.
does that work for you?
That works. Thank you very much.
Okay, and then green check. Okay, remember I showed you that when we did the switch?
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, but I'm here to remind you. Okay, so make sure you save your work so you don't lose it in case bad things happen. Okay, we're going to create another feature. We're going to do another extrude. And what we're going to do is we're going to select this back side of the loft. And we're going to create another extrude. Now, I want you to look, before I go too much farther, I want you to look over here in your browser. And if you have a folder that says 2 bodies, you did not make your loft correctly. Okay, and it's going to create problems for you later. So I'm just telling you that now. So is there anybody who has a folder here that says bodies and it says 2. Does anybody?
I have one that says solid body is parenthetical 1.
So it's solid bodies and it only shows one body?
Yeah, it says solid bodies, and then it says loft 1.
Okay. So when you click on it, does it select everything in your part? So if you highlight housing, does it select, if you select
Yeah, so when I click on loft 1, it selects everything in the part.
it does. Okay. All right. So that's kind of important, because if you, for example, if I uncheck merge result, I don't want you to do this. I'm just showing you. See right here where it says 2 bodies? Now I've got a boss extrude and I've got a loft. So I've got 2 bodies in here, and that'll mess me up going forward. So, and Elsa's familiar with this issue as well, right, Elsa?
Why would it do that?
It gives you 2 bodies if you forget, or if for some reason merge result is unchecked. You also get that error if you didn't have 2 sketches. If you just selected a face and 1 profile. So if you have just face here and profile 2, you would get an error. You want to see the names of the 2 sketches here.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not saying you have that error. I'm just pointing, because we're working remotely and I'm not there and I can't troubleshoot for you. I'm telling you about possible errors that you might have. I'm not asking you to go purposely create these errors. In fact, I'm asking you not to. But I just want to, because I'm not in the classroom and Elsa's not in the classroom, and you guys are being hung out to dry, in a matter of speaking, and this is a complex part. There's no question, it's a complex part. So this moment where we've just created this loft is where, if you're going to make an error, this is the moment. La momenta de verdad. Okay, the moment of truth for all of you. If you have not created this loft correctly, it's going to create problems for you down the road in all sorts of ways. So I just want to make sure that that's the situation. Anna.
Hi. So when I try to click on my profile 1 in the loft, it seems like it wants me to select the circular edge before it will let me I don't know, the only thing it will let me put in the profiles is profile 2 and then closed loop that's in profile 1.
Okay, so then I would wonder if you created that first sketch.
I did. It's there. But maybe I should just redo it.
But did you convert entities? Did you create that circle in your first sketch?
I did, yeah, but maybe I'll just redo it.
Okay.
I'll just redo it. Yeah, you can go on. Sorry.
So you want to make sure that you've got 2 sketches, and if the first sketch is empty, that can also create an issue, and it would prompt you to select the edge.
Okay.
Okay, so you want to make sure that sketch actually has that circle in it.
Okay, I'll make sure. Thanks.
Okay, all right. So I just want to make sure, before we move forward, I just want to make sure everybody's golden. Okay, so we're gonna click on this back face here for a new sketch. And I am on the bottom of page 6-37. Okay. So I'm selecting this back face and I'm going new sketch. And what I want to do is I want to convert this whole edge. So I'm just going to select this face, the whole face. and I'm going to say convert entities. And notice what it did. It just brought in everything on that edge. And I want to do an extrude, and I'm going to extrude it 4.4. And I'm going to green check. And I want to save. Look at that. This is starting to look like one of those camp batteries, right? Starting to look very familiar. And I forgot. On this Boss extrude, the one I just did, I wanted to have a 1 degree draft because it's a plastic part. It needs a draft. Okay, and I'm going to save. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to do a shell, and I want to remove this face, this front face, because this is where the battery is going to get inserted and where we're going to screw on our lens cap that we made. All right. So we're going to do a shell. David, did you have a question?
No, no question. I'm muted.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to click on this face. I'm going to say shell. And I want to shell at 0.1, which is what the value is by default. And I'm going to green check. Look at that. That's looking pretty good. All right. So the question is, was everybody able to create that shell? Is there anybody who needs help? Okay, so everybody should have been able to shell their flashlight. Now, when you've got that battery and that light bulb in there, it's going to get hot when you're carrying that flashlight around. So what we want to do is we want to create a flange to kind of shield your hand when you're carrying that flashlight around through the woods. So we're going to create a sketch on the front plane. So notice where the front plane is. It's on the back side. Do you see that? Remember when we created this first extrude, we extruded it out in the positive Z direction. That's why I was like so adamant about making sure you got the direction right. All right. So we want to create a flange on that front plane. So I'm going to highlight the front plane and I'm going to say new sketch. Right? So I'm on the front plane, I'm in a new sketch. And I want to select this inside edge to convert or copy onto the front plane. So I'm going to select this inside edge and I'm going to go convert entities. And you can see that circle copied over. Now, a lot of people, forget to do this convert entities. And if they do that, it's going to create issues. All right. So I'm doing a normal 2 view. And now I'm going to draw a circle all the way out. I'm going to add a dimension, and the dimension is 5.125. So I've got 2 circles there. I've got the 5.125 circle, and I've got the circle that I copied. Jim.
Yeah, no, I had a question, but you just answered it.
Okay. Okay.
So just to clarify, you convert the entity twice to create two circles?
No, you just, I created this smaller circle, was this inside edge that got converted.
Right.
And the second circle, I actually drew a circle.
Ah, okay, right on.
Okay. Thank you, Dylan. Okay, so make sure you have two circles. If you only draw this big outside circle, what's going to happen is that when we extrude it out, it's going to close off the shell and it's not going to look right. Okay. So now I'm going to go to extruded boss base, and I'm just going to extrude at 0.1 so that I have this flange. And I'm going to green check. And I'm going to rename that flange. Okay. See it? And I'm on page 6-41. This is a plastic part. So we need to have drafts or it's not going to come out of the mold properly. Now this part section's drafted, right? And this section is drafted because when we extruded, we made a draft. We didn't draft this front extrude though, the very first extrude. And the reason we didn't draft it was if we had drafted it, we would have had an error message when we created that loft. But we can use this draft tool right here to add a draft after the fact. Okay, and that's what we're going to do. So everybody should locate that draft tool on their ribbon. Okay. And what a draft tool does is it basically adds a taper. And when you add a taper, you need to designate what's called a neutral plane. Okay. Our draft angle is going to be 5 degrees. Our neutral plane is going to be this face right here. So this little thin edge is going to be the direction of pull. And notice we've got a little arrow here showing the direction of the pull, whether you're drafting outside of the flashlight or into the flashlight, the direction of the taper. This controls the direction of the taper. And then we're going to draft the outside cylindrical face of the housing. So it asks us right here, what face do we want to draft? And I'm going to select that face. Notice it color codes it, and it shows me this is the draft face, this outside circular edge, and the direction of pull is determined by the neutral plane, which is this little tiny ledge right here. And then it shows the arrow showing the direction of the pull. And then we're going to green check. You see the draft there. It's kind of hard to tell, okay? But I'm going to switch to a wireframe view, and you can see right here, we've added this draft right here and right there, okay? Everybody good?
Yes.
So now we want to add a thread, and that thread is basically to allow us to attach or screw on that lens cap. All right. Well, designers are basically lazy people. If we can reuse something, we're going to. So we can use the profile for the thread that we created in the lens cap on Tuesday we can copy that sketch into this project, into this housing, and reuse that sketch. But before we do that, we're going to create the thread profile, the thread path. Now remember, when we created the thread in the lens cap, we had to bring in the thread a little bit so it wouldn't strip. So we had to add a plane. Do you remember doing that last week? So if you look on the bottom of page 6-43, we have a new thread plane. So we have to create a thread plane, and it's going to go in 1/8 of an inch. So we're going to select this little edge, again, the same edge that we used for the neutral plane on the draft, and offset that face to create a new reference plane to use for the thread. Okay, so I'm going to select this little edge, and I'm going to select plane, and I want to offset it 1/8 of an inch, so 0.125. Okay, and I'm going to switch to a right side view. And notice right now it's outside of my part. That's not going to do any good to me. I want it to go into my part. So I'm going to put a check right here where it says flip offset. Now my plane is inside of my housing. I'm going to green check, and I'm going to rename that plane thread plane. And I'm going to save. Okay. So remember, a thread is going to be a sweep, and a sweep has 2 sketches. It's going to have a circular path, and then it's going to have the profile of the thread. So we're going to do the circular path for our thread first. All right. And we want to place a sketch on the thread plane, and we want to copy this outside edge onto our sketch. Okay. So first I'm going to highlight thread plane. I'm going to say new sketch. So I'm in a new sketch. I'm going to select this outside edge, and I'm going to say convert entities. And notice that copied that circle onto the thread plane. And I'll turn off the visibility of that thread plane because I don't need it anymore. Okay. So now I've got that circle. So that circle basically controls the diameter for the helical path that I need for the thread. Okay. So remember, to create that curve, I go insert curve, helix spiral. Everybody see it? Insert curve, helix spiral. Everybody good? And notice it automatically placed it. I still want it to be pitch and revolution like I did last time. It's going to be 0.25. I'm going to reverse the direction so it's going into the part. 2.5 turns. I'm going to set my start angle at 180 degrees. Okay, and notice where that puts the start point. Right here and right there. Okay. And I want to do a taper of 5 degrees, and I want to taper it out. I'm going to show you that when I go to a right plane. See how it's following that 5-degree draft that we placed. Okay. So 1/4 inch pitch, reverse direction, so it's going into the part, 2.5 revolutions, 180 degrees, clockwise, 5-degree taper, and a check to taper it outward so it follows the draft that we have. Then I'm going to green check. And I'm going to call that thread path. Okay. And you can see the start and the end points of the thread path. So should we use the top plane or the right plane for our profile sketch? Which plane is going to intersect with that start and end point of that helical curve? Top plane or right plane?
Top plane.
Top plane. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to save. All right, and I'm going to open up the lens cap. Let me see all the other work I've been doing today. Okay, so here's my lens cap. So everybody should have done the top plane, the lens cap on Tuesday. Otherwise, you got to sit out the rest of this part of the housing. Okay. And this is where, if you named your sketches, comes very helpful. Because notice I've got this sketch here called thread profile. Now, if I wasn't sure where it was, I could type profile in my little search box, and notice it'll pop up for me and locate it for me. Do you see that? So that's pretty cool. I've got this little search box right here that I can use to help me locate features and sketches. That is very useful. Okay, so I'm going to highlight that thread profile, and I'm going to go edit copy. And I can also use Control-C. You're all familiar with Control-C. Okay, so I'm doing a copy to the clipboard. Then I'm going to go over to the housing. I'm going to highlight the top plane. And I'm going to go edit paste, or Control-V. And then you can see the profile came in over here. I'm going to rename that sketch thread profile. And I'm going to save it. Okay. Anybody need to see that again? So basically I was in the lens cap project file. I located the thread profile. I highlighted it. I went edit copy, or Control-C. I then used my window or my tab to go back to the housing. I highlighted the top plane, and I went edit paste, or Control-V. And then I just renamed the sketch. Now, right now the sketch is out in outer Siberia. We need to move that sketch so that it's on this thread plane, this thread path. So I'm going to click on the thread profile and go edit sketch. Okay. Now I want it so that the small line is outside of the housing. Okay. If I move it over to this side the way it is right now, the small line is going to be into the housing, and I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I want to move this sketch to this right side over here. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to window around it. I'm going to select move entities. Notice I've got move entities right here on the ribbon. Okay. Everybody see that? So I just windowed around. And to create my window, I just put my mouse up here, a little bit above the profile, and then I held down my left mouse button until I created this little window around everything. So I knew everything would get selected. And then I released my left mouse button. So it all got selected. And then I select move entities. And then I select asks me for my starting point. I select this midpoint right here. And now it's moving around. I'm going to move it over here. Okay. So now it's close to, it's not right where I want it. I don't need it right where I want it. I just need it in the general vicinity for now. So I've got it in the right position. So kind of did a little setting the stage, if you will. Now I want to add a relation. I want this point right here to be joined to this thread path. So I'm going to go add relation. And I'm going to select this point right here at the end of the center line. And then I'm going to select, remember on the thread path, I don't select the end point. I select the path near the end point. And then I get pierce right here. So I'm going to click on pierce. And notice that puts it right where I want it. And then I can green check. And the sketch says it's fully defined now. I can exit the sketch. Okay, so now I can go swept boss base. And it asks me for the profile. So I'll say I want the thread profile. Then it asks me for the path. And I select the thread path. And then I green check. And now I have a thread on my housing. And I'm going to rename that sweep thread. And I'm going to save. Everybody good? Anybody needing help? Anybody need to see anything over again?
So my thread profile just, I don't think it was fully defined, but it kind of like comically stretched out. It didn't really hold its shape like yours did. So I'm just curious if you could show the thread profile again.
Sure. So, so I had a lot of relationships on there. So I had these 2 dimensions. And then remember, I set these 2 angled lines equal. and I set this horizontal line, I'm sorry, this vertical line, the big line, I made equal to the center line. But it will stretch out, and that's kind of why I moved it close to the position that I wanted it before I added the pierce, because a lot of times if you do the pierce first, it will mess up your profile. Okay.
Okay, that ended up working.
That ended up working good.
Yes.
Bravo. Okay, so now we are on the bottom of page 6-47. And what I want to do is I want to, and you guys at this point, this should feel really familiar to you when you're looking at this. This should look fairly familiar, like a flashlight that you might use when you're camping, right? And what we want to do is we want to create the handle that we are going to use when we're carrying this flashlight around in the woods. Okay. So I'm going to select the right plane for a new sketch. We're going to create the handle, and for the handle, we're going to use a sweep. And
Before you proceed, Elise, I got one question.
Sure.
Right, so this is back when you put the flange on there. You selected the interior circle that was like the interior profile, and I selected mine, but it was somehow cut up into segments, and it's telling me that the sketch has more than one open contour. Is there a way that I can combine them?
Okay. Because you should just have one circle.
Right, I should.
Okay, so if you don't, I would just delete it and just draw a small circle.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
I'll do that.
Let me look at what that dimension would be. So the diameter of that circle would be 4.175 for the inside circle. And then the outside circle would be the inside circle is 4.175 in diameter, and the outside circle is 5.125. Okay, so we're going to create the handle, and the handle is going to be a sweep, which means it's going to be two profiles, a path and a profile. It's going to be two sketches, a path and a profile. Our first sketch is going to be the path. It's going to be on the right plane. Notice the right plane is right in the center of that midline of that housing. So I'm going to right click on the right plane, go new sketch. I'm going to draw a center line from the origin. Okay. And I'm going to draw a horizontal line. And then I'm going to draw a vertical line. And I want that vertical line, I need to add some relationships here. I want that to be vertical. And I want it to be coincident to that end point there, or that edge. Okay. And I want to add a fillet. So I'm using this Filat tool. And then the horizontal line to the origin or center line is going to be 2.5. Okay. And you'll notice at that point, it is fully defined. So I am on page 6-48. I'll give you a second. Okay, so everybody should have their path sketch created. I'm going to exit the sketch and I'm going to name it handle path. And I'm going to save. All right, now in the book, she creates the profile for the handle in a very convoluted, annoying way. So I'm not going to do it her way. I'm going to go off script. All right, just so you know. And let's see. Okay. So this profile is going to go on this back face of the flange. Okay, so the first thing is I need to select that back face for the sketch. So I'm going to select the back face of this flange. I'm going to right click. I'm going to say new sketch. Okay. And then instead of drawing it the convoluted way she says, I'm going to use this slot tool. Okay. And I want to create the slot that you see on the bottom of page 6-50, 6-50, using the slot. Okay. So I select the slot tool. I'm just going to draw a straight line and then come out. There's my slot. Okay. And this is going to have a dimension of 1 inch. This is going to have a radius of 0.1. So I've drawn the slot. Now what I want is I drew the slot away from the path, so I'm going to need to move it over. And what I want is I want the midpoint of this line to be coincident with this point right here. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the point tool right here. I'm going to place a point. So locate that point tool. Select the point. I'm going to place the point right on the middle of the top horizontal line. Right? So I've got this point right here. And now I'm going to add a relation. I'm going to add a relationship between this point that we just placed, and I'm going to select the line, not this endpoint. I'm going to select the line close to the endpoint. Kind of like when we were doing the moving the profile for the thread. So I'm going to click there and I'm going to say pierce. Bam. Right where I wanted it to be. How cool is that? And then I'm going to exit the sketch. And I'm going to call that handle profile. So I've got the handle path and the handle profile. Does anybody need to see that again, or is everybody good? Anybody having any problems, questions, issues, concerns? Good. Okay, so we've got two sketches. One's called handle path, one's called handle profile. We're going to use the swept boss base tool here on the ribbon. Okay. So I'm going to select Swept Boss Base. It automatically selected the handle profile. Now it wants the path. So I'm going to select my path. Then I'm going to green check. And look at my handle. How neat is that? And I'm going to rename that handle. And I'm going to save. Any questions about the handle?